Hello, everyone. This is a meeting of the Urbana Community Development Commission, regular meeting. We'll start by calling the meeting to order. The meeting is now in order. Next is roll call.
Fred Cobb,
Here.
Janice Bankston,
Here.
Brian Cunningham, Chris Diana, Ann Hines Silvis,
Here.
Lauren Carplus, Jerry Moreland,
Here.
Lisbeth Searing.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Okay, next is a approval or modification of minutes from March 22nd, 2016. We'll take a couple of minutes and take a look at those, after which I'll entertain a motion for approval or modification. Okay, does anyone need more time for minutes? If not, I'll entertain a motion for approval.
So moved.
Okay, there's motion for approval of the minutes as written. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the minutes as written. Are there any comments? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, no. The minutes stand approved as written. Okay, next we have petitions and communications. Do we have any
No, we
okay,
don't.
written? Okay, nothing written. Audience participation. Anyone in the audience want to come up forward and say anything at this point?
Well, I'm with the Wesley Food Pantry, and we were applying for the I believe it would be at the council meeting. It's the city council meetings when agencies are invited to apply. I apologize if there was, it stated that the meeting was today, but you're more than welcome to come to any council meeting between now or next week, next Monday, and when the Consolidated Social Service Fund amounts are finalized.
Which should be mid-June. So yes, council is the body who makes the decision on the social service applications. This body is the one who determines what the priorities are for the CDBG portion of the social service. And other, our annual action plan and other items, but the council is the one who does those applications and approves those. So if there's anything that you want to share, it would be council that you would want to do that too.
Will we get an email on that meeting?
It's every Monday.
Every Monday?
Yes, during the public comment, public input is when anyone who has applied can come and share. So,
I will do that then.
okay. But you're welcome to stay and listen to our meeting if you. Okay.
I plan on being here for a little bit, so.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Okay, next we have a staff report.
Okay, several things I'll point out is, one, from HUD, we received a reminder letter about our timeliness for our CDBG, which we have already met. So we have to have it, we run a report, I think it's in IDIS, and you have to have at least a 1.5, meaning that it's 1.5 of your grant. So that means you have to spend that amount or less. I'm sorry, that amount or more to have a lower score. And so we ran the report and we're at 1.44, so we are good, which is great. I don't think we've ever been over on the timeliness, so that's great. And we also received a letter regarding the home program and the commitments. So we do have issues. We have until the end of July. In fact, next month, we will be coming with agreements that we will have that will address the commitments, and that will be taken care of too. We just haven't have those ready yet, but they will be for next month. So that will be taken care of as well. We're also waiting for a response from HUD regarding our submission of additional items that we had submitted for consideration for the home program monitoring that was done last June. So we're still waiting to hear if they've accepted or if there's any additional information that we have to submit. I know it's a process, but hopefully there will be a light at the end of the tunnel soon. And then you can see other activities, definitely working on the annual action plan, working on budgets, budget time review with the city, so working with finance department and our director, making sure that payouts are made, the social service fund, managing that process, and as you can see, some of the rehab projects that we have, Randy has listed the numbers as far as emergency grant, access grants for applications, and whole house, blight reduction, and coordinating with Habitat for the Attorney General grant, and then also listing the regular meetings that staff attend. So that is our staff briefing. Is there any questions about anything?
No? No questions? Okay. Thank you. All right, next on our agenda, old business. Is there any item of old business that any commissioner would like to bring up, or staff?
No, we don't have any old business at this
Okay,
time.
everything that we discussed before has gone through smoothly,
Yes.
I assume. Okay. Next is our item of new business, which is a resolution approving the City of Urbana and Urbana Home Consortium, Champaign, Urbana, and Champaign County, that's the consortium, annual action plan for fiscal year 2016-17. Okay. We have a little entry in our packet on that. Would you all
Yes.
like to expand on it?
Sure. I'll let Matt start, and then I will add, and of course, if there's any questions that we can address, we'll do that as well. So,
Okay.
Our plan was to just sort of go through the plan. I'm sorry. Our plan was just to go through the document section by section and just sort of cover the basis of that and just briefly summarize each of the sections as we go on. And you might notice some of the sections have sort of like designations. The first section on page 1 is AP05. That's because annual action plans now are created through a federal interface. They sort of take care of the formatting for us and put in those designations. So it's really, it doesn't signify a whole lot other than just to separate each of the sections, and it's just a part of what the interface has decided to call those sections. So that was just a point of clarification. But yes, starting on page 1 with the executive summary, that first paragraph there really just spells out what's in the rest of the plan, that this is a document that shows the different activities that the city plans on funding through the federal grant money that we receive, and also showing the budget that we have proposed for those federal grant funds. And that budget is shown in the memorandum as well as on the last page of the plan document. Moving on.
Yeah, I was wondering, can I ask?
Yes, yeah, feel free to interrupt.
Question that, since the budget includes Champaign and the county, does this imply that they have already agreed on all of this? Since we're just Urbana.
Yes.
When we approve this, does this mean that we're approving just the Urbana portion, or are we suggesting what Champaign and the county should also approve?
right, what we're would be approving would be the City of Urbana's Community Development Block Grant portion and home portion, as well as Champaign and the county's home. Since we are the lead entity for the home consortium, we are required to put everybody's information in the annual action plan. And then Champaign, they do an annual action plan on their CDBG only. Yeah, we meet monthly for the tech committee, and so they are aware of the dollar amounts. HUD published within the last few months, they published what the amount that the consortium would receive.
Yeah.
So Champaign and the county are already aware of what their portion would be.
And that portion is fixed. It's a percentage that's handed down by HUD. We get a total for the consortium. Urbana is assigned a percentage from HUD.
Right.
Champaign is assigned a percentage in the county. So the numbers are essentially fixed. There's really not a whole lot of mobility with those numbers.
Okay.
Yeah, the mobility is more of what they do with as long as they are eligible, expenses and programs. That's where the flexibility is.
Okay. Go ahead.
I think that the public hearings do not show a lot of community interest. And I was wondering what could be done about that. I would assume you would have a plan to correct that. Usually, there were paid people at the meetings, and that was it. And that does not give a good picture at all of what's going on in the community.
Right. Yeah, we post on the city website. We have in our newsletters have listed the public hearings, and we also place actual notices like right at the site that there will be a public hearing, and we do that at least 2 weeks before the hearing. So the neighborhood can see at this site, here's a public hearing and this is what it's about. So
What explains the total lack of concern in the community?
I know we've tried to engage, and that's why we have them even in the neighborhood, so that hopefully the neighborhoods will
Doesn't seem to
come.
make any difference. They're
Yeah.
still not there.
Right. You know, we'll keep trying to get, you know, we do have a lot of turnout actually for from social service agencies who work with Urbana residents that come and share a lot about what they see. But yeah, actual in the neighborhoods, we don't really have hardly any attendance at all, if anybody showing. So we'll just keep trying. I mean, of course, if there's anything that you can think of that might help us, we will certainly, you know, try when we have our next public hearings. You know, so.
Yeah, I had mentioned once before about announcements in the libraries.
Okay.
Has that been done?
I believe that we fax to the library. They have like a community section, and that we have, yes, our public hearings are posted there.
Oh,
Question is, do people go to that section and read? But yes, we do send notices of our meetings and public hearings and neighborhood meetings.
What about daycare centers?
No, we don't, but that might be something we can look at. We can certainly add that to our list to contact daycares. Sure.
We have also been in contact with Natalie Kenny Marquez, who deals with a lot of the city's social media presence. And we have discussed possibilities with her of reaching out on Facebook and Twitter to try to access the public through those avenues. And we're still in the early stages of that, but that's definitely something that we're exploring at this time.
She's our department's marketing and Market on the Square coordinator, and she's doing a lot for our whole department to get the word out about different events. So they're hoping to get a newsletter from our department out, which will highlight every division. So that will be an added information that will go out as well.
okay. Go ahead.
I'll continue going through the plan then. On pages 2 and 3, there's a description of the different objectives, goals, and strategies that are included within the plan. And also in those strategies, at the end of the text explaining them, is in parentheses different city programs that we can use as part of those strategies to then meet the goals and meet the objectives.
And these goals were originally in the consolidated plan for 2015-2019, and they also are incorporated every year when we do the annual action plan.
Moving on to page 4, we have a discussion of the citizen participation process, and on the following page is a table showing when each of the public hearings took place, as well as the public comment period and the locations of those public hearings. Then going into the more of the body of the plan, on page 8 is the first section that represents more of the bulk of the plan. That's section AP10, which is titled consultation, and it also describes many of the different collaborative efforts that we have with agencies and other jurisdictions with whom we partner. The Housing Authority of Champaign County is certainly one of the main agencies with which we partner. They are working on the Aspen Court Urbana Townhomes redevelopment, as well as our Highland Green new housing construction development. Certainly, we also partner with and collaborate with the Mental Health Board, the United Way, and the Champaign County Continuum of Care, particularly on the needs of homeless individuals in the county and in the city. And partnering also with the Continuum are a number of other agencies: Courage Connection, Community Elements, Crisis Nursery, Daily Bread Soup Kitchen, and many others. On page 10 is a table showing each of the agencies that did provide comment at the social service public hearing. On page 13 is section AP 12, and that's, again, participation, just talking more about the citizen participation process and how that informed the goal setting through the rest of the document. Then on page 15 is section AP 15, expected resources. And that shows the monetary allocation amounts that we expect to receive from HUD. For the home portion, we're expecting to receive $637,772. And that amount will, of course, be distributed proportionally between the City of Urbana, City of Champaign, and Champaign County. And the Community Development Block Grant funds will be solely for the City of Urbana, and we are expecting to receive $364,676. And on the next page is a table showing different activity, in the narrative description showing different activities that the city plans to use Community Development Block Grant and home funds for. Some of the CDBG funds include the Emergency Access Grant, Senior Repair Grants, public infrastructure activities, our Transitional Housing Program, and also the federally funded portion of the Consolidated Social Service Fund.
And we're also included in that public service is the neighborhood cleanup that we have, one in the fall and one in the spring. And I'll make a note here that our next neighborhood cleanup will be May 21st.
That's correct.
Saturday, May 21st from 8 to 2. And we'll be sending out notices to the target areas about that cleanup.
And that will be at the same two locations as well.
Where is that?
That's Dart, I think it's Dart
It used to be Solo Cup, it's now Dart, and then King
and
School.
King School. And some of the activities with which we use home funds are the whole house rehab program, as well as new affordable housing construction, particularly the type of new construction that Habitat for Humanity undertakes. And it also, home funds are also used to partially subsidize the development of larger projects such as Highland Green, and we expect that it will be used for the Urbana Townhomes Aspen Court redevelopment as well. Tenant-based rental assistance is another major home-funded activity.
What page are you on now, please?
That was page 17, and now I'm just moving on to page 18.
Okay. A question, one of these columns, it says expected amount available, it says reminder, I may imagine that's remainder of con plan?
That's just a sort of an extrapolation of taking our amount that we received in the first year of the consolidated plan, and since it's very difficult to tell what the amount would be over the next 5 years, considering how much it's fluctuated, it's that amount multiplied by 5.
Yes, that's how the system works, is that you figure out, like the first year, what our allocation was, and then we took that times 5 and said that's what our expected amount is. Of course, that can go up or down depending on HUD, but that was that expected amount column there.
Okay.
On page 18, we have a narrative section just describing the other funds, the state, private and local funds that we've been able to use the federal funds to leverage. For example, the Attorney General grant that Habitat for Humanity has been able to use is something that's been able to help our home dollars go further. On many of the pro formas that Habitat for Humanity has submitted, the home-funded portion represents a certain percentage of the new housing construction cost, and the Attorney General grant also forms a similar proportion. So the home funds are able to go further because of the Attorney General grant, the city's capital improvement funds, and tax credits that are hopefully going to be used in the Kerr Avenue Highland Green development, as well as the Esmond Court Urbana Townhomes development.
It's got Bristol neighborhood also?
Yes, that's something obviously in Champaign, but they are intending to use home funds for that, and as soon as they're at a point where they would be ready to commit home funds to that project, that's certainly something that we want to support them on.
And they also did use their community development block grant funding to leverage Section 108 loan that they received from HUD for that redevelopment as well.
Moving on to page 19 is section AP 20. And that's a listing of our annual goals and objectives. The first goal being the provision of decent, affordable housing opportunities. And on the far right side of the page are different indicators and targets that we hope to reach relative to those goals. A certain number of housing assistance, rehabs completed, homeowner units added. So those are just some of the benchmarks that we hope to achieve with our federal funds. And on the next page are
Excuse
two.
me.
Yes, go on.
I was wondering, what does that term, rapid rehousing, mean? What is that?
Rapid rehousing is a program particularly targeting homeless or recently homeless individuals to try to get them back into permanent housing as quickly as possible. The city doesn't have any programs specifically focused on that right now. I believe the Regional Planning Commission.
Yes, through the Continuum of Care, particularly I think the Emergency Solutions Grant from HUD to the state, they have rapid rehousing funds. So it yes, really targeted, yes, to the homeless families and individuals to help them rapidly get back into housing, apartments and such.
And our two other goals are addressing barriers to affordable housing, as well as preserving the existing affordable housing supply. And there's narrative about those goals on pages 21 and 22.
You know, at some point in the past, they used to list what the barriers were. I didn't see,
It's
yeah, the barriers. Yeah, is that in here? I didn't,
I believe it's later in the plan. There's a
Alright.
question, a prompt that where that's discussed.
Okay.
I think it's closer to the end, but yeah, we'll definitely keep that in mind. And if there's anything that you think should be added to that, that's something we can take into account. On page 25 is section AP 38.
Hmm? Yeah.
And that's a table explaining each of the, I believe it's 11 projects that we plan to use our CDBG and home funds for. The CDBG projects include planning and administration, public services like the transitional housing program, as well as the neighborhood cleanup and the consolidated social service fund support. On page 26, the CDBG housing activities include.
I'm sorry, I'm so back on 25.
Sure.
Why are all the blanks not filled in?
I believe it's because some of those, they may not apply to us in this situation.
Well, then don't you usually note something like that?
We will definitely go back through and make sure that if it's not applicable, that we write not applicable on there. Part of the problem is this is web-based, and then downloading it to the Word document had to be reformatted. And so that's why it looks strange, and some of the things may look like they're blank. But we will definitely, it's due to HUD by the 13th of May, and then once council approves it, we will go through and make sure that, because some of these that are pre-populated and when we can't get in there to put information.
So
but
for example, goals supported, they will be listed. Needs addressed, those will be listed.
Yes, if we're able.
Funding will be listed explicitly, rather than just funds will be used.
Yes, we will, like I said, we'll make sure that everything is completed and information
And this
that we're
has to
able
be
to.
done by when?
We have
What is the date?
the 13th of May. So we still have some time to complete this. Again, some of this is where we're not able to enter information. It's like pre-populated or not. So, and we will make sure to reformat and look at everything to make sure that all the information is in there.
And how have you determined needs to be addressed, goals to be supported? Since the public hearings are working, where are you getting your information?
Well, these goals are all attached to our consolidated plan that we had, and we had a lot of public hearings last year, and we
a lot of
actually
people?
we went to different neighborhoods. We did have some people. We also went to certain organizations and agencies like the Mental Health Board, Housing Authority. So we got a lot of input from a lot of different sources and that's how we came up with the needs and those goals to address those needs. And the annual action plan is like the budget and showing what are we going to do regarding those goals, how are we going to address them. But the goals are mainly decided and from the consolidated plan process, which is the 5-year.
So Kelly, it looks like what really happens is that for each one of these 11, those are your line items in the budget. So if it's administration, then not every one of these categories applies, because the target area, well, the administration would be projects. So I think it's just redundant to list every single one, but on some of these, yeah, you would have something in there, but not for every single
But
one.
it may be redundant for us if we're talking federal government.
Well, yeah.
They love redundancy.
Yeah.
That is true.
They do. I think that it's like a checklist for every single one, and just even though you don't check it, it's the blank is still there and looking blank. So that's kind of what makes it a little confusing. But if you go back to those project names, they're calling every single line item a project and then treating it with the detail that you would a project. But that's not always necessary for each one of these. That's what I think is happening.
I think that's correct, especially with what you said about the admin. I mean, that's it's not really addressing directly any needs, goals. It's really, just allowing staff to really just be there and manage the grant and support the rest of the document.
And carry out the goals.
But there's no way to differentiate different projects. It's the same categories applied to each of them regardless of what they ultimately are. But yes, we'll definitely work on that table and try to put in text as applicable.
So, but am I also understanding, I mean, when you say that it's pre-populated, that this might be something that HUD is just, doesn't let you put information in?
There are some parts that, that it's already, you can't get the information in there, so.
They've already decided that it doesn't apply to Urbana's program, therefore you can't put
Right,
information in?
yes. I
Okay.
can't specifically tell you which ones, but there was throughout in the system going in that you can't put any additional information in.
So-
But like I said, we will definitely go through, back through this and make sure that what we can put in, we will make sure that that information is in there.
Okay. See, we're page 27?
Yes, that's exactly where I was thinking. And that's the beginning of also looking at the home projects. Of course, there's a planning and admin project. At the bottom is a home Chodo operating project, and operating funds are typically used almost as in the same way as admin funds, but the operating is given to community housing development organizations. And in recent years, that project has been sort of reallocated, but how that's going to work this year sort of remains to be seen in terms of Chodo operating. But we do anticipate Chodo project funds and Project 9. That's the Chodo project cap. It's about $97,000. There's an agreement that came before this commission and council recently to try to dedicate those funds for fiscal year 15-16. Once we have a written agreement with HUD confirming our home amount, we will bring more Chodo project agreements before the commission, and we will likely, right now the only Chodo is Habitat for Humanity, but we have had others come through in the past, so we are certainly open to working with any organization that might meet those criteria. Also included in this table are the programs that Champaign County and the City of Champaign plan to use their home funds for. And then on page 31, Project 11 is tenant-based rental assistance. And right now, tenant-based rental assistance is undertaken by the county, Courage Connection, and Community Elements.
Mm-hmm.
And those funds are sort of brought through Urbana, and then as we receive invoices from those agencies, we reimburse them for those activities.
I will tell you that the Community Development Block Grant, there are national objectives with that grant, and the main objective that we use those funds for is to help low and moderate income households in targeted areas in the city. So that's what we use CDBG for, and then home is for affordable housing.
On page 32, we have section AP 50, which is just sort of walking through the distribution of the different funds. Most of the CDBG funds, or most of the funds are about 2/3 the CDBG funds. That's where about 70% is distributed to the in that table there, the census tracts 53, 54, 55, and 56. The 10% to City of Urbana is the home funds. Our portion, a third of that is about 10% of the total between the two grant fund allocations. And then the remaining 20%, the remaining amount of the home funds, is distributed to City of Champaign and the county.
You can see at the bottom of page 32, the rationale for targeting the target census tracts is because we have to look at that at least 51% of the total number of the households are at least 80% or below. That's what CDBG is targeted for. So that's why we have those target areas, census tracts.
Moving on to page 33 is section AP 55, focusing on affordable housing and our goals for serving particular types of households and specific numbers, benchmarks that we would like to reach for those targets.
Of course, they are definitely estimated. Number of households, we don't know for sure, but at least as an estimate of the numbers that we would like to serve.
And on the next page, page 34, is section AP 60. And that's a discussion of our interactions with the Housing Authority of Champaign County, and a little bit more of a description about them and their designation as a moving to work agency, which allows them to waive certain public housing statutes and regulations that housing authorities typically have to follow in order to be able to, and the flexibility allows them to experiment more and be able to use their funds in more creative ways. They also have a partnership with Habitat for Humanity in order to encourage homeownership among participants in their programs. On page 36 is section AP 65, which details homeless and other special needs activities and the programs that we support and with which we collaborate to serve those populations if we aren't able to serve them directly. And particularly with the homeless population, we partner with the Champaign County Continuum of Care very closely to be able to direct our funds in a manner that is able to assist them when possible. And in particular, the Emergency Solutions Grant funds are not detailed in this plan in the same way that Community Development Block Grants and home funds are, but they are funds that we receive from the state that we then use to support shelters, in particular crisis nursery and community elements. And we are also hoping, or we have recently entered into an agreement to support the centralized intake program with the Champaign County Regional Planning Commission.
Yeah, how does the state's lack of a budget affect state funds?
These are actually, they're federal pass-through funds. They're given to us from the Illinois Department of Human Services and to HUD, to DHS, and then to us. So the funds are not directly coming from the state, and because of that, we have been able to access those funds and reimburse those shelters for their activities.
Mm-hmm.
I also certainly want to point out that the city has been collaborating with the United Way and a number of other agencies who are trying to bring the emergency family shelter to fruition And that's definitely something that will be an asset to our community once it comes online. And then on page 39, we have section AP 75, and this was the section that I was referring to earlier, referring directly to barriers to affordable housing. On page 39, it discusses that, as far as we can tell, public policies are not something that specifically affects the cost of housing in a substantial manner, but the presence of the University of Illinois in and near the city of Urbana is something that has definitely driven housing costs higher than they might otherwise be. And that's certainly a factor that impacts affordability, and it's something that we need to be cognizant of as we're distributing our funds.
Was that page 39?
Page 39, yes.
The second paragraph?
Yes, the second paragraph.
Actions it planned?
Yes, that's part of the question, the prompt that's in the federal interface that we've used. And that's
It planned.
yeah, I know it sounds kind of awkward.
It does.
But I don't believe there's anything we can
planned.
really.
No, that's one of those, this is the question, we can't change it, unfortunately. One of the pre-populated questions.
But we can certainly explore ways to try to turn sort of this, the way it's written right now, into something a little bit more readable, a little bit more accessible. That's certainly something that we can look into and try to put together as the document goes through its final approvals. And on page 40, we have section AP 85, which are other activities, other programs that we wanted to be sure to mention, but may not have particularly made it into other sections of the document. For example, the city does not currently have any programs specifically dedicated to addressing lead hazards in the community, but that's definitely something that we have our eyes open for. And if any other programs become available that we might be able to apply for, that's definitely something that we would find, I guess, that we would want to do.
The Champaign-Urbana Public Health District, though, is actually going to stop doing routine lead screenings because they've only identified, I believe, 2. This was anecdotal. 2 children in the last 5 or 10 years who actually had high lead levels. So I
Right.
don't know that that is necessarily the priority here,
Right.
that it might be in other places.
Right. Yes, and we actually did have, I think, some years ago with CU Public Health, they did apply to the state Illinois Department of Public Health to get what we call the GLOW program, and it was for lead, removal of lead-based paint hazards. And the last at least the last time that they decided to apply, there was not, they did not get funded because they said there was not that risk in this area as there is in Chicago and other parts of the state. So unfortunately, this is also another pre-populated question that, but we can certainly, probably should also put here as well that, there is, per the, maybe contact the public health district to get their take on that, and could include that it's not really a risk in this area.
Yeah, or that it's not, but certainly it's something that public health will have to monitor in some way, and so that could be, and I know that there's a lot of crossover already with people from the health department and a lot of the different things that the meetings that you guys go to.
And-
So that would be a way to find out if it does become a new problem for some
Right.
reason.
I know that Randy, when he goes and does the rehabs in the units, that they presume that there's lead, so that they have the lead practice, the safe practices.
And that's for any structure that's built prior to 1978. It's just rather than going through any structure and trying to determine lead, that's just an option that we have, is to just take any structure that's built before 1978 and just assume that there is lead and do what are the safe work practices that are dictated by HUD regulations. So then on page 42 is section AP 90, and that's a discussion of the program-specific requirements. In particular, it focuses on the recapture requirements for the home program. For example, if a household is given down payment assistance to purchase a home and the affordability period is 5 years, if they decide to sell that home in the third year of that affordability period, they have to pay a portion of that down payment assistance back as per the federal regulations. And the government has given us a little bit of leeway with how we choose to apply those recapture provisions, and that's where on pages 43 and 44, those recapture provisions are spelled out in a little more detail. For example, if someone in that situation did sell their home in the third year of their affordability program, they would 50% of the home investment available from the net proceeds of the sale would need to be returned to the city for reprogramming to other affordable housing activities. And then finally, on the last page of the plan is the proposed budget for the home program and the CDBG program. And I also want to just make a point of clarity. The document was brought before the Committee of the Whole last night at the council meeting to offer a recommendation for them, just due to the scheduling of the timing of how this needed to, or the process needed to take place. And they did recommend approval to the city council meeting, and we made sure to explain to them that it's certainly not how it usually works, but this plan was coming before CDC tonight.
So we're actually doing them kind of in conjunction together. They did not vote on it last night and had some questions and comments, and they will vote on it actually next Monday at their council. So this meeting is kind of in between the two meetings.
Okay. Can I get back to those barriers?
Sure.
Well, it said that the barriers are primarily financial. People can't afford the housing. And to address that, I guess they have that no down payment program. I was wondering what other barriers were found besides financial? Because, you know, criminal history, they can't get into the housing with a criminal history unless they go out of town or some outlying areas or something. But what other barriers besides financial are being addressed?
That's
about it?
Well, if you, I'm sorry, if you look at page 39, that first paragraph, it says largely financial, but also it says in addition to financial, there are other social aspects that can affect families in securing affordable housing, which would be like mental illness, unemployment, drug and alcohol addiction, and criminal record. So, so it's not just financial, but those are the other barriers that we saw as well in our
But I mean,
meetings.
what else is addressed? Is mental illness being addressed, or, you know, the criminal background? Are those just things that prohibit people from participating.
I will say that we are planning to have, in preparation for our next 5-year consolidated plan, an analysis of fair housing. It's in the past it's been referred to as the AI, the
Analysis of
And-
impediments to fair housing. But
Yes.
they have
Yeah.
restructured, organized, they have updated the, so now it is called the, it's AFH.
Yeah, the abbreviation is AFH.
But I can't remember what those stand for.
Yeah.
So that is something that we have to start,
I think it's 2017 or 2018.
yeah, you have to do it like 270 days before your next con plan. And they're already starting to roll out webinars on what you need. It's going to be more intense. It's going to be a web-based in system. So that is something that and I think it's in relation to a court case down in Texas regarding disparity of housing, and that it was targeted like in low-income areas, but they didn't feel that it even though that was the case, that it was still being concentrated in certain areas. So they didn't feel that the housing was fair and just for the people. So there was a court case, and that brought about this whole revamping of the analysis of impediments to fair housing.
Yeah, because the fact is, everybody has to live somewhere,
Right.
whether they're crazy, on drugs,
Right.
whatever, you gotta live somewhere.
Right. Well, I do, offhand, I can think of ways that these are being addressed would be the Shelter Plus Care program that Regional Planning Commission administers. It is specifically for certain disabilities, and so they have like vouchers that help
Okay.
with affordable housing.
Okay, so we could refer to regional planning.
Yes,
as one
so
way to
they work,
address-
with like Greater Community AIDS Project, Prairie Center, Community Elements,
Yeah.
and what's the fourth one? There's 4 agencies, and the regulations state that there's certain disabilities that they can work with, and so they work with these agencies, and so they provide they get affordable housing vouchers for their clients. So that's one way that these disabilities, these barriers are being addressed. Is with vouchers.
Okay.
But yeah, I know it's sort of a roundabout way of saying it, but we will certainly know more about fair housing in our community after we undertake this study in 2017 or 2018 in preparation for the next consolidated plan. That should shed a lot of light and help us to affirmatively further fair housing. That's something that HUD is really trying to push for, is not just work against not work against fair housing, but actually work to build fair housing for everyone in your community.
Okay.
And Kelly, was it 2 or 3 years ago that there was a regional meeting in Normal where we talked about the fair housing issue, in particular with disabilities and LGBT?
Yes, and I think that was kind of a precursor to this revamping of
Yeah, it was like a state-run kind of like,
yes.
everybody give your input from your area.
Yes, they were.
so-
Well, they were specifically, I think, looking at expanding like the city or the state statutes and regulations regarding discrimination or non-discrimination of certain classes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they've always used an example of the city of Urbana and how broad it is as far as the different categories. The state, I think, is working toward adding those as well,
Yeah.
and the federal.
Well,
So-
I remember that we were held up as the model, so it's kind of like nice.
Yes.
That, that Urbana's includes a reference that you can't use bias based on how someone is dressed. So like if you thought someone was dressed in a way that represented a certain culture, you couldn't use their dress as the basis for discrimination. You know, so it was like kind of, if somebody said, well, it wasn't that they were whatever, it was the way they were dressed, well, you can't do that either, so.
Mhm.
How are the goals and needs determined?
Those were primarily determined through the 5-year consolidated plan, which was assembled last year, and that involved,
Just carried it on from that?
yes,
Any changes?
none that we were able to determine through our process.
Okay. Anything else?
No, I think that's it.
Good. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Okay, now we have options. Our options are to forward the resolution approving the annual action plan to the city council with a recommendation for approval, to forward the annual action plan with suggested changes, or to disapprove. So at this time, I'll entertain a motion to adopt one of these options. And we've already heard that there was a suggestion that this would be reformatted. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm thinking to forward it with suggested changes. But it's up to the commissioners. I'm open for a motion at this point.
I move that we forward the resolution with the recommendation for approval.
Approval?
Because the formatting is actually web-based, so, I mean, to do this, to redo all this for a Word document is kind of, I don't think it's a very good use of their time, because it has to be submitted on web form anyway to the,
By the 13th, we have till the 13th.
yeah, I don't think reformatting is really,
Well, is there a second?
I second.
Is there any further comment? What about incorporating the suggested changes by Kelly and staff?
So some of the suggested changes to me seemed that they were more for clarification than that
Yeah.
they were substantial changes in
Right.
the goals and the budget and the document.
Mhm.
So
Right.
I would also think we don't need to approve it with recommended changes because we're really not changing the substance of
We're
it.
just clarifying some points in which we definitely can do that.
So that's why I would see it as not needing to be recommended with changes.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to forward the resolution to the city council with a recommendation for approval. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no? I'll say no. Is that it? Ayes have it, motion carries. Okay. Let's see, next on our agenda, there's no study session, so any other items that the commission wishes to bring up at this point?
So well, I just wanted to say that this is going to be my last meeting. I'll be traveling during the meeting in May and moving to Northeast Ohio
Oh.
this summer to be closer to family. So it was kind of sort of realized today as I was on my way here that this was going to be my last meeting. So it's been fun. I think that might have been the only non-unanimous vote in my entire time that I've served, so it's like a fun way to end. So, but it's been great learning about the city and learning your input from everything over the last several years, so.
It's been good to have your
Thank
input.
you.
Right.
Yes, yes, we've appreciated your input, and
Your input was very good. Thank you.
you'll definitely be
Have a
missed.
good trip.
Yeah, well, my trip is, I'll be working, but it's in Hawaii, so I really can't,
Oh.
it's like I'm leaving on a business trip. It's 3 weeks, but it's in Hawaii, so I really can't ask for
We're not
sympathy
the
for
same
that.
for you.
Yeah.
Okay. Since there's no further business before the commission, I now declare the meeting adjourned. Thank you for your participation.